Hey guys, tonight we're heading deep into the winding alleyways and smoky markets of ancient Rome. Not for an empire-shaking battle or a political conspiracy, but for something cheesier. Imagine the scent of goat's milk curdling in the midday sun. Picture shop stalls lined with wheels of pecorino stacked like shields and burly inspectors lifting the corners of cloaks to check for contraband ricotta. That's right, tonight you're going undercover in a world you never expected, ancient Rome's dairy regulation patrol. It sounds ridiculous, doesn't it, cheese police? But in a world where food preservation was life and trade control meant power guarding cheese was serious business. And as you're about to find out, enforcing curd law was just as cutthroat as guarding the Senate steps. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I always love seeing how far this sleepy history spreads. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing at the edge of the Forum Holatorium, the vegetable market, just before sunrise. The air is thick with humidity and the sharp scent of fermented cabbage, dried beans, and that unmistakable tang of ripened sheep's milk. You're not here to shop. You're watching. Your tunic itches in the rising heat, but your eyes are sharp. Your orders quietly observe a man named Silo, known cheesemonger and suspected violator of the Lex Casearia Rome's strict set of dairy trade laws. This isn't a mere trade infraction. If he's found guilty of mixing foreign curds into certified Roman molds, he could be fined, shamed, or worse, exiled from the market circuit entirely. And you, newly appointed by the Aediles Rome's marketplace magistrates, must collect proof. It's a strange job being a kind of food detective. You didn't grow up dreaming about mold and rennet. But here you are, trained in olfactory recognition, price memorization, and the fine art of sniffing out deceit, literally. Roman cheese was a daily staple, sure, but also a signifier of class and a vehicle for fraud. You had the cheap, soft cheeses sold to laborers, the luxury-aged wheels traded in the upper-class feasting circles, and the imperial cheeses sealed under the authority of the state. Silo begins to unpack his wares. You slip behind a fig vendor and squint. That wheel of Caseus Vetus, it's aged too long for the region he claims to be from. You know, because the salt content varies based on geography, and you've been trained to measure it by taste. But you can't blow your cover just yet. A kid runs past, balancing a basket of stale bread and olives. You're suddenly hit with a memory your first day in training. How the chief inspector had held up 2 cheese wedges and asked you to pick which one had been aged illegally. You'd guessed wrong. He'd laughed, and then made you eat both. It was humbling. It was horrible. It was necessary. Back in the market, Silo moves a small basket aside and reveals something wrapped in a linen cloth. Not a standard practice. Your heart picks up. He places the wrapped bundle under his stall, and moments later, a woman approaches. Her cloak's too fine for this district. She hands over a coin, not copper, but silver. Then she takes the bundle and disappears. This is it. Smuggling foreign cheese into the market. The Aediles will want names and descriptions. You follow her at a distance down the Vico Jugarius and into the grainier outskirts. She ducks into a wine shop. You count 10 heartbeats before slipping inside. Inside, the wine fumes nearly knock you over. You find her at a rear table unwrapping the cloth. It's not just cheese, it's Greek cheese. Spiced, oily, banned from being sold without full disclosure under Roman law. Why? Because Greek dairy undercut Roman producers and was blamed for cases of soft stomach, a euphemism for violent market-ruining diarrhea. Roman authorities took this seriously. You're suddenly aware of the scroll tucked in your belt, the Registrum Casearia, the official cheese report book. Time to make an entry. Back outside, the day grows hotter, and the smell of the market ripens. Cheese traders haggle, children cry, goats bleat. A soldier bites into a round of hard cheese and frowns. Too bitter, he says. It might be spoiled. That's your cue to investigate, but you already know what you'll find: cheaper curd, mixed with old rind to cut costs. The same trick you've seen in the Subura slums. As you wander back toward the Forum Boarium, you pass one of the old stone markers, the ones used to test cheese weights. Roman inspectors used standard lead weights to prevent merchants from selling underweight rounds. Every merchant stall had to submit to random weighing. You recall how one cheese thief had hollowed out his weight, filled them with sawdust. When caught, he was stripped of his market license and made to sit in public stocks, wearing a hat shaped like a cheese wheel. Humiliation, Roman style. You stop at a stall run by a sweet old man named Tertius. He's been selling Cassius aridus dried cheese cubes for decades. You nod respectfully. He gestures to his scales and you check them. All in order. But something catches your eye, a small sign half covered in dust certified by the Caseus Collegium. The Cheese Guild. Of course. You'd almost forgotten guilds were the unsung overseers of quality in Roman markets. If a cheese bore their mark, it was usually the real thing. That mark had power. Guilds kept detailed records of curd sources, aging caves, and seasonal spoilage rates. You once heard of a cheese so legendary, so perfectly aged and balanced, that the emperor himself demanded it be delivered daily, only to find that a guild apprentice had swapped it with his uncle's moldy batch and pocketed the difference in gold. That apprentice was never seen again. Your shift is ending and your feet ache. But there's one last stop back to the administrative quarters to log your findings. You cross the forum, passing temple steps and slouching statues. Rome, for all its glory, still ran on human labor and the constant threat of punishment. Cheese was just one thread in the vast, tangled tapestry of control. When you arrive, the aedile barely looks up from his scrolls. You drop your notes, and he grunts his approval. Just another day in the Department of Dairy Integrity. And as you leave, the sun dipping low, you wonder how many more illegal wheels passed hands today. How many secrets curdled quietly beneath the law's nose. But no matter, you'll be back tomorrow. After all, someone has to keep the cheese honest. Morning comes again, and with it the buzz of the marketplace rising like steam from the cobblestones. You wake to the earthy scent of barley porridge and the faint, familiar tang of drying curd from the storage room next door. A small amphora of diluted wine sits waiting on your table. You sip it slowly as you lace your sandals. No one thanks a cheese inspector. No one notices when you get it right. But let a single bad wheel slip past your nose and end up on a senator's table. Then suddenly, you're famous for all the wrong reasons. You step into the street just as the sun begins to brush the rooftops in gold. Today, you're scheduled for something different. Not just market patrols or stall checks, but a visit to the Caseus Collegium itself, the Cheese Guild. You've only heard stories. Most inspectors never even get close unless summoned. It's not so much a building as a fortress of food secrets. Recipes, regional monopolies, brine aging techniques, it's all kept under lock, key, and guild oath. You make your way past the Circus Maximus, dodging a donkey cart, and two bickering bakers, and turn down a quieter lane. The guild hall is squat and wide, carved from thick volcanic tufa, with iron-bound doors and a suspicious number of guards. They don't smile when you show your badge. They just nod and open the door. Inside, it smells nothing like a market. No goat dung, no hot vinegar, no spoiled figs. Just cool, stone-aged air and the unmistakable aroma of controlled decay. The scent of perfection cheese, yes, but also of discipline. A woman in a deep red tunic greets you. She's the curatrix Cassiaria, the head of inspections within the guild. Her name is Livia, and her eyes are sharp enough to slice through a wheel of firm ewe's milk without a blade. "You're the inspector who flagged Silo yesterday," she says. No questions, just facts. You nod. She doesn't praise. She doesn't thank. She simply gestures for you to follow. She leads you down a corridor lined with carved reliefs, cows, goats, and even buffalo depicted beside great wheels and brining vats. Each relief marks a province: Campania, Gallia, Cisalpina, Sicilia, each known for distinct cheese profiles. You stop at one shaped like a small domed round, ringed with tiny scallops. "That's Caseus lunaris," Livia says, "a sacred recipe. Used to be made only for the temple priests during the full moon festivals." She taps it gently. Now it's just another product to protect. You enter a chilled chamber next. Rows of shelves grown with aging cheeses, each tagged with stamped clay seals. Livia pulls one down and cracks the seal. "Smell this," she says. What do you notice? You lean in. Strong but clean, no ammonia. Sharp bite from salt curing. But there's something else, an edge of spice, faint but wrong. You hesitate. Imported thyme oil, she confirms. Illegal if not declared. Causes upset in certain Roman bellies. She replaces the wheel and sighs. You'd think after centuries of conquest, Rome would handle a little herb. You spend hours with her that morning. She teaches you to spot hollow centers in soft cheese by the sound it makes when tapped. Shows you how some dishonest traders inject oil to fake aging sheen. Even demonstrates the vinegar test. A few drops of diluted vinegar will foam if the milk used was improperly soured. You take it all in like a sponge, your fingers now stained with rennet wax and the occasional chalky mold. By midday, you're exhausted. Livia sends you off with a thin smile and a wrapped parcel of guild-approved Caseus nobilis. "A thank you," she says. "But don't let it soften before you get home." You leave the guild feeling like you've just returned from battle. It's humbling. The layers of knowledge, the fierce pride. You suddenly understand why cheese protection was never just about food. It was about economy, honor, and Roman identity. You cross the street toward a public fountain intending to rinse your hands. That's when you see it. Two men, one crouched, one standing too still. They're exchanging something. A wheel of cheese, number smaller, sliced, smuggled samples. The crouching man wears baker's linen. He wouldn't have access to whole wheels. The other likely a broker middleman for unauthorized sellers. You approach casually. They scatter. The broker drops the packet, and you scoop it up. A small wrapped wedge. You unwrap it, creamy white fine structure. Too fine. Caseus albus, likely from Gaul. Rare. Controlled. And here it is, unsanctioned, traded like contraband behind a street shrine. You report it, of course, but the unease follows you through the day. How many of these little exchanges go unnoticed? How many palms are greased, while honest vendors struggle under regulation? Later that evening, you sit outside your quarters and watch a group of children chase each other with bits of stale bread and cheese rinds. Their laughter echoes down the alley. You remember your own childhood scraping cheese from an olive plate at a cousin's wedding, then getting scolded by your aunt for chewing too loudly during the ceremony. Cheese was always there, It still is. But now you see the cracks, the loopholes, the smugglers, the traders with waxy smiles and oily fingers. Your next assignment is pinned to your door by morning. A merchant ship has arrived from Sardinia claiming full compliance with Roman dairy law. But the manifest smells fishy. Quite literally, it lists caseus salsus, a heavily salted soft cheese used to mask spoilage during long voyages. Your job is to investigate the claim and test the cargo. So with your tasting knife, vinegar files, and updated registry scroll, you prepare once again. Because in Rome, even cheese needs watching. You make your way down to the Emporium, the bustling riverside port, where merchant ships dock with goods from across the empire. The Tiber glistens under the morning sun, and its surface is crowded with low, flat-bottomed boats carrying amphorae barrels and baskets. Among them is your target, the Fortuna Maxima, a Sardinian vessel reportedly carrying a shipment of caseus salsus, heavily salted cheese used by sailors and long-haul traders to survive weeks at sea. You flash your inspector's medallion and step aboard. The captain, a man named Cassius with sun-dried skin and an impatient mustache, narrows his eyes when you mention the cheese manifest. It's all in order, he insists. Marked, sealed, certified in Corrales. You nod, but don't answer. You're already moving toward the cargo hold. The trick with caseus salsus isn't identifying it. It's figuring out what it's hiding. Spoiled milk can be disguised with enough salt and herbs. And in Rome, if you sell spoiled cheese to citizens without warning, you're not just fined, you're publicly shamed, often with symbolic punishments, like being forced to carry an oozing wheel around the marketplace, followed by children chanting rhymes about your dishonor. You climb down into the hold. The air is dense with the smell of brine and mildew. You spot the marked barrels quickly, each sealed with red wax, and bearing a stamped dolphin, the Sardinian export symbol. You slice one open. The smell hits first sharp, salty, slightly metallic. You dip your testing blade into the curd slice off a sliver and rub it between your fingers. Grainy, not ideal. You taste a speck, bitterness lingers, which it shouldn't. Cassius, you call. This batch was oversalted to cover early spoilage. It's borderline toxic. He groans. We had a delay. Docking issues. The hold got warm. You raise an eyebrow. And the certification. He hesitates. Forged. Just this once. That's all you need. You note the barrel numbers, confiscate samples for the guild, and order the rest quarantined. Another scam prevented. But it won't be the last. Traders are getting bolder, and the Cheese Guild can't inspect every ship. That's why they have you. As you leave the ship, the scent of the spoiled curd still lingers in your nostrils. You walk upriver toward the Aventine Hill, where several upper-class villas overlook the port. There's a senator there, Lucius Vettius, known to host lavish feasts where cheese is served between every course. You've been invited to observe his supplier, an honor supposedly, though it's more likely that someone reported a concern. The villa is palatial with manicured gardens, ivory statuary, and a small pond where geese waddle near fig trees. A steward leads you past guests lounging with goblets of honeyed wine and into the kitchen wing where chaos reigns. Slaves rush with trays, cooks stir bubbling pots, and in the center on a polished marble table lies a magnificent cheese wheel nearly half a meter across. This is the pride of Lucania, the head cook beams, aged 2 years in oak barrels lined with myrtle, delivered 3 days ago. You nod, then kneel beside the wheel. Your nose tells you something's off. You pull out your testing pick and cut through the rind. Inside, it's too soft. No way this cheese aged 2 years. probably 3 months at best, accelerated by heat and covered with wax to mimic the aged rind. A classic trick. You run a few more checks. There's mold, yes, but artificially brushed on, not naturally grown. Where did you say this came from, you ask? The cook stammers. From the Sabines. No, wait, from you cut him off. This cheese was doctored. I suggest you don't serve it. An argument follows. The steward is furious. The cook tries to save face. But eventually they concede, and the wheel is pulled. You leave the kitchen under heavy stares, knowing full well that not everyone appreciates the cheese police. Back in the city center, you stop at a public weighing station just outside the Porta Trigemina. A crowd has gathered. A cheese vendor, young, nervous, sweaty, is being inspected by a junior aedile. One of his caseus cretensis wheels is suspiciously light. The vendor protests, but the aedile pours water over it, and the outer layer begins to melt. It's a wax shell filled with grain paste. A fake wheel. The crowd gasps. You hear someone whisper, "Cheese swindler." That's all it takes. The vendor is seized. His stand is dismantled. He'll likely face punishment by evening if he's lucky, just a fine. If not a short stint cleaning public latrines while wearing a wooden mask shaped like a wedge of cheese. The Romans loved a bit of theatrical justice. As the crowd disperses, a little girl tugs at your sleeve. She's holding out a crumb of bread topped with a curl of hard cheese. "Is this real?" she asks. You kneel, take the crumb, sniff it, and smile. "Very real," you say, "and very good." She beams and skips away, and for a moment the day feels a little lighter. You return home just after sundown. The streets are quieter now, save for the occasional clatter of amphora or a donkey's bray. You drop your notes on the table, wipe the day's curds from your tunic, and light a small oil lamp. Your supper is simple bread, olives, and yes, cheese. A safe wheel from a trusted vendor, certified and sealed. You slice it carefully and chew in silence. It's sharp, nutty, perfect. Outside, the city prepares for sleep. But tomorrow, there will be more merchants, more ships, more tricks. The empire runs on grain and oil, but cheese. Cheese is where the real drama hides. And you'll be ready. The next morning begins not with the usual market patrol, but with a summons. A red wax tablet arrives before sunrise, carried by a sweaty runner in patched sandals. The seal bears Sitsursum, the insignia of the Prefectus Annonai Rome's official overseer of the grain and food supply. That's several steps above your usual pay grade. You barely finish your watered wine before throwing on your sash and heading for the city center. As you walk through the awakening streets, you realize something. A summons from the Annonai office means the issue isn't local. It's systemic. Bigger than a smuggled wheel or a fake label. When the food supply is threatened, the city trembles. Bread riots have broken out for less. At the office, a secretary waves you through. Inside a dim room with high ceilings and thick stone walls, the prefectus himself sits at a marble desk surrounded by scrolls and maps. He doesn't look up when you enter, just gestures to a seat. "We've had complaints," he says without preamble. "Multiple districts, sour cheese, rashes, nausea. Most trace back to a new distributor operating out of the Transtiberum district. Goes by the name Faustinus. Claims to run a clean dairy chain." You nod slowly. But the prefectus leans forward. But his name didn't appear on any of last month's import logs. Not even on the informal guild rosters. In Roman bureaucracy, being invisible is either the sign of a very new business or a very shady one. You're given temporary authority to inspect the premises, seize goods, and if necessary, shut down operations entirely. A rare responsibility and a dangerous one. Food fraudsters don't always go quietly. Some bribe, some beg, some bite. You cross the Tiber by footbridge entering the Transtiberum. It's a noisy, tight-spaced district where traders, freedmen, and foreign laborers cluster. Taverns sit cheek to jowl with shrines and bakeries. And there, on a side street, tucked between a perfumery and a lamp maker, you find it a warehouse with no sign, just a painted cheese wedge above the door. You knock. Nothing. You knock again harder. A latch clicks. A thin man in his 40s opens it a crack. We're not open yet. You hold up your medallion. Inspection. He blinks. Opens the door wider. Of course, come in. Inside the warehouse is surprisingly clean. Stacks of crates, shelves of labeled jars, and several cloth-covered wheels sit along one wall. You take a deep breath. No obvious stench. No insects. But something is off. Too tidy. Too prepared. Are you Faustinus, you ask? No. I just run the morning staff. He's usually here around midday. You step closer to one of the wheels, pull back the cloth. It looks fine. Firm rind, even color. But you notice something odd. The cheese is shaped in a way that isn't standard for any Roman variety. It's almost Greek. You cut a small slice and examine the texture. Dense, slightly oily. Then you taste. Immediately your tongue prickles. Strong brine. Too strong. Not fatal, but unpleasant. Meant to mask something, probably age or contamination. You find a crate marked for delivery to the Aventine district. Inside, several more wheels. Same shape, same texture. And hidden underneath the top layer, cracked rounds, discolored edges, and what appears to be a soft mold, bloom partially scraped off. This isn't production, it's repackaging. You turn to the staffer. Where's your paperwork, delivery receipts, supplier lists? He stammers. We, had a flood. Last week. Ruined the ledgers. A lie. Classic but thin. You nod curtly and seal the crate with wax from your pouch. This warehouse is shut until further notice. He protests, but you're already writing the notice and nailing it to the frame of the door. You'll send a junior to guard the place until Faustinus arrives. With luck, you'll catch him red-handed. With less luck, he's already fled to Ostia. You return to the prefectus office to file your report, and they take it seriously. Rumors are already circulating. 2 upper-class households filed complaints this morning. Vomiting red patches on the skin, even one collapsed slave. All had eaten from the same wheel. A wheel that likely passed through Faustinus's hands. You're exhausted, but not finished. Back at the forum, a crowd is gathering around a speaker on a wooden platform. He's holding up a misshapen cheese wheel and shouting about fiscus fraudus cheese fraud. That's a bold claim. Then again, boldness is what Rome rewards. You step in just in time to hear the man declare that imported cheese is poisoning Rome's citizens and that only locally grown, temple-blessed dairy should be sold in public stalls. You recognize this tactic. Fear-mongering to push personal trade networks. Probably wants to cut out Greek imports entirely. As much as you dislike smuggling, banning imports could cause shortages. Price hikes, riots. You quietly ask a nearby lictorius, a city guard, to note the speaker's name. You'll look into him later. Maybe his cheese passes every test. But maybe he's just redirecting suspicion away from his own cellar. By the time you return to your modest room that evening, Rome is beginning to glow orange with torchlight. You remove your belt, wash your hands, and light your small hearth. You sit down with some leftover bread and olives. But tonight, you don't reach for cheese. Your palate is too tired. your mind too full. As you lie down, you remember something Livia once told you. The city will always try to cheat the cheese. But we are here to remind it, milk spoils faster than lies. Tomorrow you'll track down Faustinus. You'll check the speaker's credentials. You'll return to the guild for another training session on brine falsification. But tonight you rest, because even the cheese police need sleep. You're back in Transtiberum by dawn, standing in front of the shuttered warehouse where Faustinus was supposed to appear. But the street is empty. No footsteps, no carts, no sign of life. You squint up at the roofline, half expecting to see someone watching. Nothing. Your junior inspector is stationed by the entrance, a gangly youth named Marinus, who smells perpetually of vinegar and ink. No sign of him, Marinus says. But someone tried the lock last night. Scraped the wax seal. You kneel and examine the doorframe. He's right. The seal is still intact, but barely. Someone tried to open it, then thought better. Probably Faustinus or someone he sent. The cheese inside is still quarantined, but your time is limited. Spoilage waits for no one. You tell Marinus to remain vigilant and head to the forum. Today's plan was supposed to be a training session at the Cheese Guild, but Faustinus' disappearance has thrown a wheel into the works. Still, you could use their insight, especially Livia's. The guild hall is quieter than usual when you arrive. A shipment had gone out early to the eastern provinces, aged hard cheese packed for soldiers stationed in Syria. In peacetime, cheese was a comfort. In wartime, it was a lifeline. Livia meets you in the courtyard. I heard about Faustinus, she says without greeting. He's not a new name. He used to belong to a salted fish syndicate. Vanished after the salting pits in Ostia were raided. Looks like he changed flavors. You frown. Why cheese? Livia shrugs. Because it's everywhere. Every class, every table. If you want to disappear into a commodity, cheese is the best cloak. The rich want it refined. The poor want it cheap. The soldiers want it dry. It can go bad, be altered, hidden. And no one questions it unless they get sick. She takes you to the guild's archive room, a cramped vault lined with scrolls, tablets, and waxed sample plates. She retrieves a case file, 3 previous complaints against F. One from a sailor in Ostia, another from a priest in Tibur who claimed a festival cheese caused hallucinations, and one from a guild vendor in Subura who claimed Faustinus diluted brined cheese with spoiled milk to stretch inventory. All 3 reports lacked conclusive proof. The man was slippery. What's our next move, you ask? Livia smiles thinly. We bait the trap, and so an idea is born. A staged buyer posing as a wealthy banquet planner will request a bulk order from Faustinus delivered to a rented storeroom. You'll watch, intercept, and inspect, if he shows. It takes 2 days to set up. In the meantime, Rome continues to churn with its usual rhythm, bread-baked garum poured amphora rolled across stone roads. You pass a street performance mocking food inspectors. 2 actors slap each other with inflated goat bladders while a third, dressed in a tunic labeled Inspector, faints from a sniff of cheese. The crowd laughs. You don't. At night, you return to your quarters and record each day's events in your personal scroll. Not the formal register, the one for the aediles. No, this one is private. A cheese diary, you once joked. But really, it's your record of a war no one wants to admit exists. On the 3rd day, Faustinus bites. A message arrives, delivery at midday via Caerulea to a client named Domina Valeria. The name is fake. The location is real. You're waiting on a rooftop opposite the storeroom, hidden behind a stack of discarded amphora shards. Your knees ache from crouching. The heat is rising. And then you see him. Faustinus. Broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, wearing a dusty green cloak and leading a cart covered with canvas. Behind him, two younger men carry crates. They pause at the door. You give the signal. Two lictors emerge from the alley. Faustinus freezes, eyes wide. The younger men bolt but are quickly caught. You descend from the rooftop as the guards pull back the canvas. Wheels of cheese all stamped with a fake guild mark. Several emit a sour tang you can smell from 3 paces away. You cut into one. The center is gray. Another filled with mashed barley and lard, no dairy at all. He wasn't just smuggling poor cheese. He was faking cheese entirely. Faustinus tries to protest. It's for the poor, he says. They can't afford your snob cheese, but the guards aren't listening. Neither are you. He's taken into custody. That evening, you report the full list of goods, seized locations linked, and witnesses gathered. Livia receives a copy and adds it to the guild archive. Faustinus will likely face public punishment. Maybe the cheese mask. Maybe a fine he'll never pay. Either way, his scam is done. For now. But as you walk home under the indigo sky, a new worry creeps in. If someone like Faustinus could operate for months undetected, what else is out there? What other syndicates? What rivalries among cheese houses? What corruption inside the guild itself? And that's when the letter arrives. Pinned to your door, unsealed. No signature, just a single line in elegant handwriting. Look into the forum. Cassiaria account books, something stinks more than the cheese. You stare at the note for a long time. Because if the Forum Cassiaria Rome's central cheese market is compromised, you won't be chasing lone smugglers anymore. You'll be chasing a cartel. The Forum Cassiaria. The very name sends a tremor through your chest. It's the nerve center of Roman dairy commerce, a vast sun-scorched square nestled between the grain market and the Temple of Ceres. Hundreds of transactions occur there daily. Wheels are bartered, sealed, certified. Inspectors roam like ants across a feast, and guild scribes log every detail, or so you thought. Now standing at the edge of the square with the anonymous warning still folded in your sleeve, you scan the faces in the crowd. Who wrote it? A disgruntled clerk, a rival merchant, a guild insider with a guilty conscience. You take a slow breath. First things first, access the books. You approach the public record station, a low marble pavilion, guarded by 2 scribes and a bored city official. The forum's ledgers are kept here bound in leather, stored in shaded alcoves, where ink won't run and seals won't melt. You flash your badge. I need last month's cheese trade records. All classes, all provinces, including the private export logs. The scribe raises a brow. Under whose authority you pull out a copy of your summons from the Praefectus Annoni, still valid technically. The scribe doesn't push further. He vanishes into the archives and returns 10 minutes later, arms loaded with scrolls and ledgers. You settle into a bench and begin. You read for hours. At first, everything looks normal shipments from Gaul, Sicily, Etruria. Routine tax stamps, proper guild notations. But by the 3rd ledger, you spot something strange, several high-volume entries labeled Caseus Classis 4, a category reserved for bulk municipal cheese orders like rations for soldiers or distributions to the poor. You trace one such entry, 500 wheels, marked for the Aventine Grain Dole program. But cross-referenced with the shipping manifest from Ostia, only 200 were ever received. 300 vanished in transit. No record of spoilage theft or redirection. You check again. same pattern in other entries. A consistent skim, always from the same merchants, always adjusted by the same clerk, Publius Cotta. You stare at the name. It means nothing at first. But as you dig, you find it repeated over and over, always attached to questionable entries, always at points where oversight was weakest. He's not just a scribe. He's laundering cheese. You close the ledgers and rise. You need to find him. Cotta works out of a small office tucked behind the basilica. You make your way there and knock. No answer. You knock again. The door creaks open on its own. Inside, it's dim, stifling. The desk is a mess, open scrolls, spilled ink, half a wheel of cheese with a bite taken out. No sign of Cotta. But one thing draws your attention, a small, folded parchment tucked beneath a bowl. It's a supplier invoice. And on it, the same merchant name appears again and again, Licinius Alimentum. You know the name. Licinius is a mid-tier cheese merchant supposedly clean with a storefront near the baths of Agrippa. He's not big enough to question, not small enough to ignore. And now he's the common thread in multiple fraudulent entries. You roll up the parchment and slip it into your satchel. Then you make one more sweep of the room and find something else wedged under the desk, barely visible. A wax seal, cracked and discarded. It bears the mark of the Cheese Guild, which means someone inside helped. You leave the office and step into the brightness of the street, heart pounding. Cotta is missing. Licinius is dirty. And the guild, your own supposed allies, might be involved. You head straight to Livia. The guild hall feels different this time. Tense. As if the very walls are listening. You find Livia in the aging vault inspecting a rack of Caseus viridis, a rare blue-veined cheese meant for elite households. She listens as you lay out your findings. Every missing shipment, every altered ledger, every forged stamp. When you finish, she's silent. Then Cotta was ours. Once. But he went freelance years ago. We thought he was harmless. You shake your head. He wasn't. He's been draining shipments, possibly selling to Faustinus-level dealers. Livia folds her arms. Licinius, too. We checked him last year. Nothing stuck, because the books were clean. He had help scrubbing them. A long pause. Then she speaks. We'll audit the guild seal logs. Quietly. You'll handle Licinius, but tread lightly. If he suspects you, he'll burn the shop and disappear. You leave with a plan and a knife tucked into your belt, just in case. Not for slicing cheese this time. That evening, you approach Licinius's storefront, under the guise of a casual buyer. The shop is immaculate racks of cheese waxed to a gleam, labeled with perfect calligraphy, and arranged like an art display. But your eyes aren't here for beauty. You chat with the clerk, ask for a round of Caseus nobilis. You inspect the seal. It's fake. A perfect forgery almost. But you've seen too many to miss the flaw. The ink is a shade too dark. Guild ink oxidizes over time. This was printed yesterday. You buy the wheel, smile, walk out. Now you have proof. But Licinius, he's watching you from the back room. You catch his eye. He smiles. It's the kind of smile that says, I know who you are, and I'm not afraid. You clutch the wheel tighter and walk faster. Tomorrow you'll report to Livia. Submit the wheel for chemical testing. Try to trace where Licinius sources his forgeries. But tonight you sleep uneasily. Because for the first time you realize this isn't a cheese smuggling ring. It's an empire within an empire. and you've just cracked its rind. You sleep, but not well. Dreams come in fractured bursts, images of cracked wheels, leaking ink of cloaked men, whispering under archways of cheese seals, bubbling like wax under fire. When you wake, your throat is dry, your tunic is twisted, and the sun is already warming the clay tiles overhead. You don't waste time with breakfast. By mid-morning, you're back at the guild hall with the forged wheel wrapped in cloth and tucked under your arm like contraband. Livia meets you in the analysis chamber, an underground room filled with amphorae samples and testing tables that smell of vinegar herbs and aging fat. You place the cheese on the table. Livia peels back the cloth and studies the seal. She doesn't even need a magnifying glass. "It's one of ours," she says, "but not made by us." She slices the wheel. The interior is white and crumbly, too dry for the type it claims to be. She pinches a bit and rolls it between her fingers. "Chalk additive," she says flatly. "They've been thickening the curds to mimic age." You nod. "And the ink on the seal too dark." She tests a sliver of wax in vinegar. It fizzes. That means beeswax was diluted with resin, common in counterfeits, because it molds faster under a press. Every marker of a forgery is here. "We'll trace the batch," she says, "but don't expect Licinius to roll over. If he's still operating this boldly, he's not working alone. Someone's protecting him. You both know what that means." Politics. In Rome, no fraud operates at this scale without backing. Licinius might be the face, but behind him could be a senator, a magistrate, or worse, a corrupt guild member. Someone with access. Someone who knows the inspection routines. Livia assigns 2 of her best internal clerks to investigate the seal press logs. If the fake stamps match missing press templates, then someone inside the guild has been smuggling out tools. You meanwhile have a new job: investigate Licinius's supply chain. You begin at the Doliarium, the amphora registry. Every bulk trader must log their purchases, and cheese transported in clay pots or crates leaves a paper trail. You spend hours scanning trade parchments, following Licinius's name like a trail of curd crumbs. And there it is. Licinius has been receiving monthly shipments from an obscure farm estate outside Bovillae in the Alban Hills. The estate isn't listed in the guild's supplier registry. It should be. All registered cheese producers must be certified by regional curators. This one, it's invisible. That's a red flag wrapped in a rind. You take a rented mule cart and set out for Bovillae the next morning. The ride is long and dusty. Olive groves pass you on both sides, and the hum of cicadas fills the air. Finally, in the early afternoon, you spot the estate tucked into a low slope with barns half collapsing and smoke lazily drifting from a rear chimney. No sign, no guards, just a gate ajar. You step through cautiously. The place stinks, not of milk, of rot. You follow the scent to a low storage shed. Inside, amid wooden crates and old tools, you find them wheels stacked floor to ceiling. No markings, no labels, just rough wax, uneven rinds, and the unmistakable fuzz of mold starting to bloom. You slice one open. The curds are dry, filled with sawdust. Another oozes from within, an improperly drained wheel, rushed through aging and clearly diseased. You gag. Suddenly, a voice behind you. "I wouldn't eat that." You turn hand on your dagger. An older man stands in the doorway. Sun-beaten skin, arms crossed. He doesn't look afraid. He looks tired. "This your farm?" you ask. He nods. "It was my father's. Now it belongs to, well, not me." You raise a brow. "Licinius," he spits. "Not him. The man behind him." Gaius Marcellinus. You blink. That name, Senator Gaius Marcellinus, is one of the wealthiest grain speculators in Rome. He holds land from Etruria to Campania, and now apparently cheese, too. The farmer goes on, "They pay me to keep quiet. Ship the cheese to the city. Doesn't matter if it's spoiled. They mix it with better wheels anyway. I complained once. They burned the grain store. You grit your teeth. The operation is bigger than you thought. A senator laundering spoiled cheese through fake vendors using Guild Seal replicas and fake pressings. It's not just fraud. It's treason against the public food supply. You give the farmer your badge seal. If anyone comes asking questions, tell them the cheese inspector was here, that you cooperated." He doesn't argue. You suspect he's been waiting a long time for someone to come knocking. You return to Rome by nightfall, cart rattling over stones, your mind racing. At the guild, Livia has news. One of the internal presses is missing. Went unaccounted for in the last rotation. Disappeared just after Cotta was reassigned. It all fits. We go public, she asks. You hesitate. Going public means accusations. It means challenging a senator. If you're wrong, your career ends. If you're right, it could shake the very foundations of the food system. But you know what you saw, and so you nod. Tomorrow, a full guild tribunal will be summoned. Licinius will be brought in, and you'll testify cheese wheel in hand. You go home that night in silence. But just before bed, you carve a small note into your private scroll, "Corruption ferments like milk in heat." But so does justice if you know where to press. You arrive at the guild tribunal hall just after dawn. It's one of the few places in Rome where silence feels louder than noise. Vaulted ceilings swallow sound, and every step echoes against polished stone. This chamber is reserved for serious matters, grain tampering, currency fraud, and now cheese corruption that has wormed its way into the city's food chain. Livia greets you near the entrance, dressed not in her usual work tunic, but in formal inspector robes, black with red piping. She looks sharp, composed, and ready to burn reputations to the ground. A few senior guild members file in behind her, their faces carved from years of careful neutrality. Then comes Licinius. He strolls in with calculated calm, flanked by two legal advocates, and dressed like a man who has nothing to hide. His beard is oiled. His tunic gleams. His smile is just wide enough to pretend this is all a misunderstanding. You sit opposite him, the forged cheese wheel resting on a linen square before you. The room settles. The senior magistrate, an elder named Servilia Cassia, rises. We gather today on allegations of fraud, forgery, and unlawful distribution of unregulated cheese goods in violation of Guild Code 417 subsections 3 through V4. Formalities begin. Charges are read. Licinius's representative denies everything. My client, he says, has supplied Rome with quality dairy for over a decade. He has no need to deceive. You wait, quietly, patiently. Then the floor is yours. You rise. This wheel, you begin lifting it carefully, was purchased 3 days ago from Licinius's shop, sealed as Cassius Nobilis, stamped with guild approval. You place it on the tribunal block. It's a forgery. The seal was chemically tested and found to be printed using non-guild ink. The wax is corrupted with resin. The curds contain chalk. Taste and aging analysis prove it was rushed to maturity in under 2 weeks. And its actual place of origin. You pause for effect. Is an unregistered estate outside Bovillae operating without certification under the secret patronage of Senator Gaius Marcellinus? A gasp. One of the guild elders shifts in her chair. Licinius stiffens, but he doesn't speak. You continue. Marcellinus is using Licinius as a front. He's laundering substandard cheese through unregistered farms, falsifying production dates, and selling it under stolen guild seals. You hand over the sample logs, the purchase parchment from the Beauville farm, the list of missing guild press tools, all marked and sealed. Livia distributes copies. The evidence is overwhelming. Then silence. The magistrates retreat to chambers for deliberation. You remain seated. Licinius avoids your eyes now. The smile is gone. You see it finally, the worry beneath the oiled composure. When the tribunal returns, the verdict is swift. Licinius's license is revoked. He is fined a ruinous sum, stripped of guild protection, and banned from cheese trading within the city walls. The guild will press charges with the Senate regarding the misuse of their seals and request a formal inquiry into Senator Marcellinus's holdings. It's a victory, but it doesn't feel like one yet. After the hearing, you and Livia step outside into the bright Roman morning. Pigeons scatter at your feet, and market stalls are opening with a clatter of wood and cloth. "We got him," she says, brushing her hands together. You shake your head. "No. We got his front." She nods slowly. "Marcellinus will bury this in paperwork. Buy time. Delay hearings. He's not going down without a fight. And if he's laundering cheese, you say he's probably doing more. Oils, garum, maybe even grain." You return to your quarters that night, not to celebrate, but to prepare. Because now you're not just a cheese inspector. You're an enemy of someone with wealth power and a reason to protect the rot. You eat a simple supper barley soup and a slice of safe dry cheese. Nothing fancy, nothing worth faking. And before sleep you write again in your personal scroll, "Rot festers in the shade of power. And I've stepped into the shadow." The next day dawns with the weight of knowing you're a marked man. You feel it in the air, the stillness just before something breaks. The tribunal may have ruled against Licinius, but in Rome, public disgrace doesn't always equal justice, especially when the accused still has powerful friends. Friends like Senator Gaius Marcellinus. Word travels fast in this city. Before the forum, Cassiaria even opens, rumors are already trickling through the merchant stalls. Licinius stripped of seal rights. Fake cheese sold to the Aventine elite. Inspector brings down a senator's man. But not everyone is thrilled. Some vendors look away as you pass. Others frown openly. Licinius was popular. He offered discounts, forgave debts, turned a blind eye to low-quality stock. With him gone, the supply chain has tightened, and the prices predictably have risen. You head to the guild office for an emergency strategy meeting. Inside, Livia has laid out a map of Rome, a network of red wax dots, marking every known vendor connected to Marcellinus's shadow operation. "It's not just cheese," she says grimly. "We intercepted a crate marked for Hispania. Inside, honeyed goat cheese filled with spoiled rennet and grain paste. Export fraud." You glance over the map. The reach is staggering. Taverns, baths, villas, even the food stalls outside the Colosseum, all possibly touched by Marcellinus's counterfeit network. And it's not just about cheating the palate. This stuff can make people sick. It already has. "We need more than tribunal orders," you mutter. "We need the people." Livia raises a brow. "You want to take this public?" You nod. "We stage an exhibition, a tasting, a lesson. It's a gamble. Romans love drama, but public spectacle risks stirring unrest. Still, the only way to fight shadow with light is to shine it loudly. You propose a plan, a public display at the Basilica Julia, where citizens can compare guild-certified cheese with counterfeit wheels, Let their tongues do the judging. The guild consents, reluctantly. By midweek, word spreads. A cheese duel, some call it. The trial of the tongue, others joke. But the crowds come. The basilica buzzes with curiosity. Long tables are set with labeled samples. Guild cheese on one side. Seized counterfeit goods on the other. Each round comes with information, where it came from, what went wrong, how it passed as real. You speak briefly before the tasting begins. Romans, you say, we are known for roads, law, and empire, but also for food. What we eat reflects who we are. So ask yourself, do you know what you're eating? Then you step back. Citizens sniff, poke, slice, taste. Some grimace. One man spits out a crumb and glares at the fake cheese as if it insulted his ancestors. A matron gasps upon seeing the interior of a forged wheel, mottled gray and leaking. Livia watches with crossed arms. You may have started a riot, she murmurs, but it's not a riot. It's a revelation. By midday, the shift is palpable. People begin asking vendors for seals, refusing unlabeled goods, comparing rinds and colors. Cheese, it seems, has gone political. That night a messenger arrives at your door. No seal, just a slip of parchment. You've made your point. Now drop it, or we'll spoil more than your wheels. You read it twice, and then burn it. Because if you're being threatened, it means you're getting close. And something tells you Marcellinus is beginning to sweat. The next day, Marinus, the junior inspector, who once guarded Faustinus's warehouse, rushes into your office. They found something, he pants. In the Aventine tunnels, a cache. You follow him up the hill, past patrician homes and shrines, into a narrow alley that leads to a maintenance tunnel used by aqueduct workers. Inside, torchlight reveals a hidden storeroom carved into the wall. Rows of amphorae. Dozens of cheese wheels, clay tablets with falsified labels, and worse, sealed crates bearing the crest of the Prefectus Annone. State-funded food. They've been siphoning off public rations and replacing them with garbage. This is beyond fraud. It's state sabotage. You record everything. Tag every crate. Collect samples. And in the back corner, almost overlooked, you find a sealed scroll tube. Inside, orders signed by Marcellinus himself. Cheese requisitioned for emergency redistribution. The orders are months old, but the pattern is clear. Wheel after wheel, diverted, falsified, resold. You take the scroll and carry it in your satchel like a knife. This time, you won't bring it to the guild. You're taking it straight to the Senate. Because now it's not just about cheese. It's about betrayal. The Senate. Marble columns stretch toward the heavens, casting long shadows across the forum as the morning sun begins to climb. You've walked these steps before, but never like this. Never with evidence that could unseat one of Rome's most powerful men. Your satchel feels heavier than it should. It carries no weapons, no gold. Just cheese records and a senator's signature. Inside, the tabularium buzzes with quiet intensity. The Senate is in session, and though you don't have the right to speak on the floor, you've secured an appointment with one man who does Marcus Junius Capito, a mid-ranking senator, known for his loathing of corruption and his love of hard cheese. You find him pacing near the back of the chamber, his toga more wrinkled than his reputation. He eyes you with skepticism until you show him the scroll. His brow furrows. Marcellinus signed this himself, you nod. It's not just one shipment. He's been diverting public food rations for months. Fake seals, rotten wheels, selling waste to the people as premium product. Capito takes the scroll and reads it again, slower this time. You see the moment it clicks. His shoulders straighten. If this is true, he says he's not just guilty of fraud. He's guilty of endangering the city's food supply. You produce the second scroll, an inventory list from the Aventine tunnels matching Marcellinus's emergency requisitions with the forged products found at the scene. Capito's jaw tightens. "I'll bring it to the floor," he says. And he does. 2 hours later, you stand at the back of the Senate chamber while Capito addresses the assembly. He doesn't shout. He doesn't accuse. He presents the evidence in measured tones, laying each fact like a slab of hard cheese on a marble plate. There are gasps, murmurs, and from Marcellinus's bench, a stillness so sharp it hums. The senator listens, arms folded. He doesn't deny it. He simply raises a hand. "These are fabricated documents," he says coolly. "From a minor inspector with an apparent vendetta against the dairy trade." Capito counters immediately. "The wax seals match your own. The crates were found sealed and buried. We have witnesses." "Then I request a delay," Marcellinus replies, "until the full contents can be verified." He's buying time. Everyone knows it. But Rome is restless. Word of the basilica tasting has spread. Citizens are talking at bakeries and bathhouses, at market stalls. They're asking for guild seals, demanding fresher wheels. Trust in the food supply has cracked, and no senator wants to be remembered as the one who stood in its rot. By day's end, the Senate orders an official investigation into Marcellinus's holdings. His assets are frozen, his shipments barred. And while no arrest is made, a shadow falls across his once invulnerable name. You return to the guild hall that evening, greeted by quiet applause from the apprentices. It's awkward. You're not used to recognition, but today it's deserved. Livia pours you a small cup of honey wine. "You didn't just expose a fraud," she says. "You changed how Rome looks at its food." You smile, but it fades quickly. Because now the real work begins. With Marcellinus under scrutiny, smaller fraudsters will scatter. Others will try to fill the void. There will be backlash, economic, political, even personal. You've shaken a network, and Rome doesn't like being shaken. Over the next few days, you draft new inspection protocols, randomized checks, harsher penalties for forged seals. The guild even discusses a public-facing mark, a wax stamp, that melts under heat, revealing a hidden symbol to prove authenticity. You suggest it look like a wheel split in half. Truth inside the rind. You're halfway through a proposal when a courier arrives. A message. Short. Precise. "Meet me at the Temple of Mercury. Midnight. Come alone. Bring your knife." It's unsigned, but there's no mistaking the implication. Someone isn't finished. Perhaps a rival of Marcellinus. Perhaps someone higher. Livia frowns when you show her. "It's a trap," she says. "Or a leak," you reply. You prepare accordingly. Hidden armor under your tunic. Knife in your belt. And instead of your usual badge, a duplicate, just in case this one ends up in the Tiber. You arrive at the temple just before midnight. The marketplace below is silent, the torches dimmed. Mercury, god of commerce and deception, watches from above in cold marble silence. A figure waits near the altar, hooded. "You're brave," the voice says. "Male. Measured. Not young." You're vague, you respond. The figure turns. "I'm not your enemy. I'm your warning. Speak plainly." There's another seal. A second press older than the one you found. Hidden in the archives. Used by a different family. You've cracked one ring, but there's another. Older. Deeper. noble. You step closer. Names. The figure laughs. I'm not ready to die. Then he tosses you a pouch. Inside 3 mini scrolls. One with a list of names, minor senators, scribes, merchants. Another with seal impressions. And the third, a coded map. You recognize the style guild cipher. Only a few alive can still read it. You look up, but the man is gone. The temple is silent once more. You stare down at the scrolls, because if what he said is true, you've only sliced through the rind, and the real rot lies deeper. You don't sleep that night. The scrolls lie unrolled across your work table, their ink glinting in the candlelight. You run your fingers along the names, some familiar, some not. Senators, merchants, and worse still, guild members. People you've passed in hallways, shared meals with. One of them even trained you in the art of curd testing. Now their names sit beside forged seal impressions and routed supply chains. And then there's the map, drawn in guild cipher, old symbols used during wartime to keep supply routes hidden from invaders. Only a few still know how to read it. Fortunately, you're one of them. You decode it slowly. It traces a path beneath Rome. Tunnels, storehouses. An ancient network of underground chambers once used to store state grain during sieges. Long thought abandoned until now. You mark one location in particular near the old Cloaca Maxima, Rome's massive sewer channel. According to the map, a chamber beneath the old brickworks has been reactivated. The map labels it simply Cella Vitus, the old cellar. You grab your lantern knife and badge. If this is real, it could be the true heart of the cheese cartel. You leave before dawn, moving through back alleys and forgotten roads. The streets are quiet, the scent of stale bread and olive oil lingering in the air. The Cloaca Maxima looms like a sleeping giant, its arched entrance yawning beneath the city's edge. You find the brickworks easily enough. It's crumbling, its red tiles blackened with soot, but one corner looks newer, reconstructed. A false wall. You test the bricks, tapping gently. Hollow. With effort, you push the section aside and slip inside. The air turns instantly cooler. You descend a narrow stairwell lit only by your lantern. The scent hits first salt mold and something sharper. The air is thick with the tang of milk gone too long without oversight. At the base of the stairs, you find it. A vast vaulted room. Lined with stone shelves, barrels and racks of cheese wheels stacked floor to ceiling. Thousands of them. And stamped on every single rind the seal of the guild. Not a fake. Not an imitation. A real seal. You kneel beside a wheel and examine the mark. It's authentic, but dated, an older version of the guild's crest retired nearly 20 years ago. You realize with a chill that these presses weren't stolen. They were preserved, hidden away by someone who never stopped using them. You begin inspecting the cargo. Some wheels are real guild standard, aged properly, but others poison. You slice one and gag. The interior is green with mold, the curds hardened like wax, unfit even for animals. This isn't just a smuggling operation. It's a hoarding site, a clearinghouse for counterfeit and surplus cheese waiting to be distributed under legal-looking seals. You move deeper into the chamber. In the far corner behind a stack of crates, you find something else, a table with scrolls and wax tablets. You rifle through them quickly. Logs, orders, a network of deliveries routed through temples, villas, and foreign legates. There's a name at the bottom of each, Decimus alias Regillus. You freeze. Regillus is old Roman nobility. His family funded one of the first cheese sellers outside Capua. He's a lifetime guild member. honored at last year's festival. And he trained your mentor. He's not just in on it. He's running it. You grab as many scrolls as you can carry and make your way back up the stairwell, heart pounding. You're almost out when you hear it, voices. You douse the lantern and flatten yourself against the wall. Two men enter the chamber below. Regillus said the Aventine shipment leaves tomorrow, one says. The last batch made someone sick, the other mutters. A snort. Then let them eat honey cakes. We're not feeding senators anymore. Just plebs. Laughter. They pass below, unaware you're just feet above. You wait until the echo of their footsteps fades, then slide back into the night. By the time you reach your quarters, the sun is rising. You lay the scrolls out and begin copying them. One for the guild, one for the Senate, one to be hidden just in case. When Livia sees the name Regillus, she doesn't speak, just sits down and presses her fingers to her temples. He taught me everything I know, she says finally. I trusted him. He built the rot, you reply. By week's end, a covert raid is authorized. The Cella Vitus is seized. The old seals are confiscated. The cheese is burned in a public square, the smoke stinking of shame and sour milk. Regillus vanishes. Some say to Capri, others whisper darker rumors. But Rome changes that week. New laws pass. Seal presses must be registered and inspected quarterly. A public list of certified vendors is published at every market. And a new office is formed under the Guild Inspectors Ciborum Food Inspectors. You are named its first head, and with that your role changes. No longer the lone cheese cop. Now you command a force, but you still walk the markets at dawn, still test wheels with your knife, still trust your nose before any stamp. Because as the city gets smarter, so do the cheats. And you've learned if Rome runs on food, then rot will always try to ride the supply. Your new office is modest. A former granary annex near the Forum Holatorium, repurposed with little ceremony. A single marble plaque now marks the doorway, Inspectores Ciborum. Inside, a long table is piled with wax tablets, seal kits, and scent-testing herbs. Shelves line the walls not with books, but with sample jars, spoiled curds, mold specimens, resinous fake wax, adulterated brines. The first day brings a line of petitioners. A baker from Subura, who suspects his cheese supplier is cutting goat's milk with chalk. A tavern girl from the Transtiberum, who claims nobles are hoarding guild cheese while commoners get the slop. A senator's steward who nervously admits his master has been importing gift wheels from Lusitania with no paperwork. You take each case seriously. That's your job now. You dispatch Marinus, your ever-reliable junior inspector, to test the baker's stock. Another inspector checks the Transtiberum taverns. You take the senator's steward yourself, not because you enjoy the risk, but because if this job has taught you anything, it's this: the higher the status, the subtler the fraud. You arrive at the domus quietly posing as a cheese merchant. The steward lets you in. You're greeted not with warmth, but with cold stone, cold faces and wheels stacked on chilled marble like trophies. You inspect the stock. The cheeses are real, aged, beautifully firm and fragrant, but none of them bear the required import documentation. No tax stamps, no guild seal. The wheels are legitimate, yes, but illegal. That's a new twist. Smugglers aren't just making bad cheese anymore. They're stealing good cheese from sanctioned routes and redirecting it into private hands, bypassing the poor entirely. The intent isn't to poison, it's to profit quietly, invisibly. You fine the steward, not lightly, and you make sure word gets around. Over the following weeks, your office expands. 2 new inspectors are trained. A scribe from the guild is embedded full-time to track the daily shipments through the forum Cassiaria. You meet with Livia every third morning, comparing notes, updating fraud patterns, logging known counterfeiters. Rome has changed, a little. But one afternoon, as you inspect a shipment bound for the legions in Britannia, you uncover a fresh problem. The wheels are beautiful, firm, perfect color. But your knife meets resistance not from rind, but from clay. You dig deeper. Inside the rind, someone has packed cheap salted lard and grain paste into a thin outer mold of cheese. A masterpiece of illusion. You let out a long breath. It's a new trick. You find the merchant. He's new to the city, claims ignorance. Says the shipment came from a vendor in Brundisium. No name, no receipt. Classic stall tactics. You arrest him anyway. But that night, as you write the report, a thought returns. Regillus might be gone, but his methods have multiplied. You cut off the head of the wheel, but the mold still spreads. The next day, a runner brings news from Ostia. A shipment of cheese bound for the emperor's feast was intercepted, turned rancid, laced with sapa wine to cover the taste. Had it been served, it could have caused illness or worse. Your inspectors mobilize. Meanwhile, rumors swirl that some members of the old cartel have regrouped under a new name, Conventus Umbrae, the Shadow Syndicate. No one knows their faces, but the signs are there, counterfeit seals found in temple offerings. Cheese bribes disguised as tithes, aging caves being rented under false names. The fraud is evolving, but so are you. You commission new seal stamps with chemical markers, hidden pigments that change under flame. You order your inspectors to carry vinegar vials laced with mint oil. One drop will fizzle if the cheese contains clay or chalk. You even teach classes in the forum, now lectures for vendors and buyers. You show them how to cut, sniff, feel. You pass wheels through the crowd. You teach Rome not just how to eat, but how to question what it eats. And slowly, steadily, something shifts. People start refusing unlabeled cheese. Vendors ask for guild audits willingly. Even the street kids know to tap a wheel and listen for a hollow ring. Still, the work never ends. One night, just before sleep, Livia visits your office. She places a small wheel on your desk. You cut into it. The interior is lined with ink letters written into the curd itself. A message from an undercover agent. You both laugh, and then you both stop laughing because it means the fraudsters are adapting faster than ever. You finish your evening notes with a single line: you can't stop the mold, but you can outpace it. Then you lean back, blow out the lamp, and rest your eyes. Because tomorrow, the wheels keep turning, and you'll be there to check every single one. Spring arrives in Rome with a sour wind from the southwest, one that carries not the scent of flowers, but the sharp tang of brined curds and animal hides. The seasonal cheese festivals are fast approaching, and with them a new wave of vendors hoping to make a name for themselves in the city's most competitive dairy arena, the Certamen Casearia, the cheese competition. You know from experience that where fame and coin gather, rot follows. The guild requests your presence at the opening inspection. Dozens of carts roll in from every corner of the empire, Sardinia, Gaul, Cappadocia, even Alexandria. Some bring exotic spices mixed with goat curd. Others wheel in monstrous aged wheels wrapped in cloth of gold and stored in amphorae like treasure. Your job ensure no one cheats. You're joined by your best inspectors, Marinus, now seasoned and sharp-eyed, Tertulla, a former vendor who once smuggled cheese illegally and now serves as your best forger spotter, and a new recruit named Flavia, whose nose is so sensitive she once identified fake sheep's milk by scent alone from a sealed jar. You divide the festival grounds into quadrants. It doesn't take long before the red flags rise. Marinus discovers a wheel packed with ash, not the flavoring kind, but ash used to conceal insect larvae. Flavia finds a sample with improperly stored mold imported to simulate high-end rot from Gaul. Tertulla, sharp as ever, exposes a Sardinian merchant, using fermented barley mash to fake the tang of aged ewe's milk. You confiscate 6 entries before midday, but the true twist comes when you inspect the tent of a merchant calling himself Vibius. His booth is impressive, stacked high, immaculate, orderly. He offers samples with a bow and a flourish. His cheeses are impeccable, rich, balanced, almost too perfect. That's what makes you suspicious. You cut into a large wheel of Caesius lunaris, the sacred moon cheese once offered only to priests during equinox feasts. It's nearly extinct. Only 3 certified makers exist in all of Latium. You know them all. You ask casually, "Who made this for you?" Vibius smiles. A family recipe, passed down through freedmen of the old Palatine kitchens. It's a good story. Too good. You step away, slice a piece, and chew slowly. You recognize the profile. You've had this before at a guild ceremony hosted by Decimus Regillus years ago, which means this cheese isn't family-made. It's cartel stock. The rot runs deeper than you thought. You order the tent closed. Vibius protests, but when you check his satchel, you find an old guild seal, one of the presses stolen during the Celavitas operation. He bolts. Guards catch him. Once under questioning, he folds quickly. The cartel, he says, never fully disbanded. They fractured, rebranded, and re-emerged. Some operate as traveling merchants. Others have slipped into legitimate roles in kitchens, temples, even estate staff. Their new plan isn't just to sell cheese, but to dominate perception. Flood the markets with subtle frauds. Poison trust, then offer clean products at inflated prices. Classic control through corruption. You report this immediately. The guild is rattled. Livia authorizes the formation of a secret review board. Trusted inspectors are embedded in key sectors, banquet halls, public granaries, temple kitchens. You even assign an undercover agent to the emperor's personal food staff. No one is above suspicion now. Still, the festival proceeds, and despite the scandal, the crowds return. Because for Romans, cheese is more than food. It's pride, tradition, identity. And they trust you now. They trust the seal. They trust the knife. On the final day, you present an award not to the richest merchant or the flashiest wheel, but to an elderly shepherd from Sabina. Her cheese is plain, honest, aged with care in olive wood crates. She cries when she accepts the honor. It reminds you why this matters. Later that evening, you sit at your desk. The festival's over, but the work isn't. You open a small cloth bundle. Inside a gift, one of the honest wheels from the shepherd's stall. You slice it slowly. It smells of grass smoke and the quiet patience of someone who never needed a seal to know their worth. You eat in silence. Then you write, "In a city of masks, even cheese can speak truth." And you know you'll keep listening, because the wheel turns, and you're still its watchman. A month after the festival, Rome enters a season of strange quiet. Not true peace. Rome never offers that, but a kind of uneasy stillness, like a knife wiped clean but not yet sheathed. The cheese market's calm. Fewer complaints trickle into your office. The forgeries grow subtler, the tricks less flamboyant. It feels as though the city is holding its breath, waiting for the next scheme. You remain alert. Each morning begins the same, a walk through the Forum Cassiaria, a test of 3 random vendors, A glance through the seal registry. Your inspectors follow suit now, a network of eyes and knives across the empire's belly. You've grown the ranks to 12. 12 honest souls in a city of shadows. But then something odd. 3 days in a row, the same cheese vendor Geminus from the Aventine fails his acid test. Not dramatically, just barely. The pH balance is slightly off, like the milk had been stored in a vessel touched by vinegar or lead. Enough to pass casual taste, not enough to fool your tools. You speak to him directly. He swears innocence, says he buys only from a trusted farm outside Veii, offers to let you inspect the next shipment yourself. You accept. The next morning, you're standing beside a cart in the early light, watching crates marked Veii curds get rolled in. You break open the first one. Inside, cheese wrapped in standard cloth. But the scent is faintly wrong, slightly metallic. You inspect the crate. Hidden in the slats, a thin lining of lead foil. Your breath catches. You've seen this before, but not in cheese. In wine. A technique used by certain poisoners to subtly affect flavor and extend shelf life. Lead slows spoilage but leaches toxins over time. And someone has been experimenting with it. In dairy. You report it instantly. Guild scientists confirm your fears. Trace amounts of lead have been turning up not just in cheese but in soft curds sold to temples for sacrifices. Children, the elderly, and the sick would be especially vulnerable. A quiet emergency unfolds. Livia calls an emergency council. Public health inspectors, physicians, and guild heads attend. They debate how to alert the city without inciting panic. You offer a solution. A new mark, Caseus Securus, a safety stamp tested for contaminants. A voluntary label at first, then a requirement for temple and medical use. It's a compromise between action and discretion. It buys time. But you want more than time. You want to know who started this. Your search leads you to an apothecary in the Subura, a known source for illegal additives. You visit undercover, ask for preservation powders. The shopkeeper offers several. One in a blue-glazed jar is labeled silver milk salt. You test it. It's powdered litharge lead oxide. When pressed, the shopkeeper cracks. A new customer, he says. An older man, always veiled, speaks Latin like a patrician. Orders bulk. Doesn't haggle. You ask to see the delivery records. There's no name. Just a sigil. A wheel crossed by a dagger. Your stomach turns. The old cartel is reforming not as smugglers but as poisoners. It's no longer about profit. It's about power. Livia confirms your worst fear: someone has turned food into politics. Contaminate the supply, let unrest grow, and step in with clean stock once the damage is done. Manufactured scarcity. Controlled chaos. You draw up a list of suspected sympathizers. The names are familiar. Former aides of Regillus. 2 former guild apprentices. A pair of senatorial aides who once handled cheese requisitions for temple festivals. Quiet, forgettable men, all with access, none with reputations flashy enough to draw attention. You dispatch your team. Some are arrested quietly. Others flee. One is found dead in his quarters, slumped over a wheel of Caseus albus, a knife in his side. The message is clear. You've rattled them again. And now they're willing to kill. You change your routines, vary your patrols, burn your notes after copying. You only trust 3 people now, Livia, Marinus, and Flavia. Even Tertulla has gone quiet, assigned to Gaul for a temporary exchange. You suspect it's a cover. You hope it's her choice. Then one morning a cheese arrives on your doorstep. No note. No vendor mark. You don't touch it. You test it from a distance. Inside a blend of cream chalk and finely ground black hellebore, a purgative, deadly in large doses. Your face hardens. You've crossed from the world of inspectors into the world of spies. But you don't back down. You write new guidelines. You ban unmarked dairy at public events. You partner with physicians to create a warning system based on symptom clusters. You even draft a scroll for the Emperor's steward warning of what's unfolding. Because you know what they don't yet understand, rot doesn't care for borders. It seeps. That night by candlelight, you sharpen your tasting knife. Not because you expect to use it, but because it reminds you. Truth, like a blade, cuts through the rind. Rome is bracing for summer, and with the heat comes swelling crowds, spoiling food and growing tension. The Senate is distracted by grain shortages. Temple stores are strained. Whispers fill the air, rumors of poisoned cheeses, black market dairy, and a phantom ring pulling strings beneath the marble. The press calls it paranoia. You call it a Tuesday. You start your day as always with a knife, a list, and a suspicious nose. But something's changed. The city watches you now. Vendors stand straighter. Clerks scurry to fetch their seals before you even ask. For better or worse, your name is now part of the conversation. They call you Custos Casearia, the cheese guardian. You hate the title. You didn't ask for it. But you accept what it means, accountability. The reports pile up. One case grabs your attention. 4 patients in the baths of Titus fell ill after consuming cheese from a private banquet. All presented the same symptoms: vomiting, vertigo, blurred vision. You know the signature, it's lead again. But this time it was hidden not in a wheel, but in a reliquum, a soft cheese mix traditionally eaten warm like porridge. You investigate the caterer. No records, no vendor mark. You investigate the estate. Gone. Vacant. Rented under a false name and already cleared out. It's the syndicate again. And now they're not just targeting the poor, they're testing the elite, pushing boundaries, waiting for someone to die publicly, someone important. You double your guards, issue a public warning. You're met with praise from some, resistance from others. Cheese Fear One senator sneers. We'll be banning butter next. You don't care. You order a citywide audit of reliquum vendors. Flavia finds a lead. A scribe who moonlights as a cheese peddler in the Campus Martius confesses that he was paid to mix additives into a temple batch. When asked who paid him, he describes a woman veiled, articulate, with a tattoo of a dagger and wheel near her wrist. The symbol again. They've gone from shadows to signatures. It's no longer about hiding. It's about showing you that they're always one wheel ahead. You return to the guild. Livia's waiting. She's pale. They hit us, she says. Our vault. You run. The seal press chamber, secured behind 3 locks, is open. Inside, 1 press is missing. Not stolen. Replaced. The false one is nearly identical, almost undetectable, until you press it. The market bears 1 microscopic change, a twist in the stem of the laurel wreath. Subtle enough to fool the market. Obvious to a trained inspector. It's a signature. A boast. They want you to know they can imitate anything, even the symbols you swore to protect. You're tired, but not broken. You organize an emergency meeting with the Prefectus Annoni, the guild, and temple clerics. You propose a radical measure, a temporary suspension of all cheese imports. Full recertification. Every wheel in Rome checked, weighed, and catalogued. They laugh. It will crush the markets, one says. No, you reply. It will save them. To your surprise, the guild backs you. For 5 days, Rome does something it's never done before, stops. No new cheese enters the city. Every market is inspected. Every wheel tested. And while it brings chaos, something else begins to rise: trust. The public sees inspectors on every corner, in every stall. They see someone fighting, and slowly the fear begins to fade. On the 6th day, a breakthrough. Marinus arrests a man selling sealed wheels from a cart behind the Temple of Concord. When searched, the cart reveals not cheese but scrolls, codes, roots, names. He is a courier, and among his documents one line catches your eye: Operation Saturn's Milk Final Delivery Capitoline Banquet. The Capitoline Banquet. A yearly feast for Rome's highest elites held at the Temple of Jupiter. Hundreds of dignitaries, dozens of dishes, and apparently a planned food attack. You move fast. Your inspectors storm the kitchen with guards just hours before the event. You find the delivery wheels marked with the laurel twist seal already plated, ready to serve. You stop it. The syndicate loses their biggest move, and you finally win. In the aftermath, the Senate praises your office. The guild commissions a new permanent inspectorate. The emperor's steward invites you for a private thanks, but you decline, because your work isn't about glory. It's about watching, always. You walk the streets alone that night, past glowing oil lamps, past closed market stalls and the echo of distant songs. In your hand, one last wheel sealed, fresh, stamped true. You sit on the steps of the Forum Cassiaria and slice a small piece. You chew slowly. It's perfect, honest, and after months of war beneath the rind, it tastes like peace, Bo. But even peace needs vigilance. So before you rest, you carve one final note into your private scroll: there will always be those who cut corners, so long as there are corners to cut. But Rome still has a knife, and that knife is you. So now, as the moon hangs over Rome and the city settles into sleep, you do the same. You wash your blade, stack your scrolls, and lower the lantern until its flame is only a whisper. The wheels are quiet now. No false seals, no hidden molds, no riddled brines. Just honest cheese resting in cool cellars bound for honest mouths. The Forum is silent. The streets empty. Somewhere in a far-off villa, a child chews on a crust of bread with a wedge of clean cheese, never knowing the work that made it safe. And that's how it should be. You've served your city. You've guarded its food. You've fought not with sword or spear, but with truth, patience, and a deeply suspicious nose. Let others write histories of wars and emperors. This was your battle, and you won. Now finally, you let your shoulders relax. You stretch, you breathe, and you let sleep come slow and steady. Because tomorrow, the city will wake again. Markets will reopen, and wheels will turn. But for now, you sleep.